Dear doesn't happen much when I'm around. Doesn't have much when I'm around in the studio. I like people to be happy. I like people to be comfortable, and I like people to be okay by and large. And I like to leave people as well as I found them when I possibly can. And so when there's awkwardness, I tend to be able to try and do something about it. And on the very rare occasions I leave silence or I'm willfully in pursuit of someone, they're a robust target, and you know, the normal desire to leap in and give them a safety net or save them is expunged by the fact that they are a grown-up and they're a senior member of the establishment and they should be able to handle this stuff. But where I get dead air is in the field, and I was thinking of 2 or 3 examples. So now I'm a studio broadcaster, but when I was in telly, whilst Campbell Live what was on every night at 7 o'clock, I worked in the field a lot, and I love the field because, you know, newsroom is one of the great misnomers. There is no news in a newsroom. The news is reported there and written there, but the news takes place where people live, where life is, where folk are. And so I've had 2 or 3 occasions of dead air. The CTV building, when I arrived there, and obviously we were in Auckland on the day of the Christchurch earthquakes, and Mike McRoberts and I scrambled to get down there, and we got an air ambulance, I think, went down from Auckland, and it landed in Timaru. Christchurch Airport was closed, and then we drove from Timaru up to Christchurch, and we got there and Mike went off to join the people who were sleeping in tents and stuff at Hagley Park, and I went to the CTV building, and no one had told me what had happened at the CTV building other than it was down, but I had no idea that there was 100 people inside. I thought there might be 4 or 5. And I got there, and the man, we've all seen the man on the phone, wandering around on the rubble, talking to his wife underneath. And I got there with Phil Johnson, a cameraman with whom I've had a great many trips. I've worked with some great camera people, Phil Johnson, Chris Jones, Grant Finlay, beautiful people that I've travelled the world with and seen extraordinary things with. And we were completely lost for words. And I didn't say much, and Phil just started filming. And I said to somebody, how many people are in there? And they said, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30. And then as the night went on, and the language school, we started to get a sense of the role of the language school, and we realised it was many, many dozens. And I found myself standing, I just sort of drifted back from it, wandered back, and just stood there silently. Being on television is a kind of get into jail free card. And people expect to see you at places, and you go there. The classic example is the 2011 Rugby World Cup final. TV3, obviously the tightest television network in the world, had no accreditation, no access, no nothing. Absolutely nothing. But there was a media conference afterwards, and to get into the media conference, which you entered at the back of Eden Park, behind the western stand, there's a little area which you can get in across the old cricket ground. If you're driving along Sandringham Road, there's a cricket ground, you go in there. So you don't actually get access to the ground, you just get into where the media conference was. So we had the shittiest, lowest form of media accreditation you could possibly have, which was a card to get us into that. No access to the ground, no access to the players, no access to anything, but to the media conference 2 hours after the game was over. But by that stage, I'd started my singular, obsessive campaign to get the All Blacks to go and play in Samoa, and I'd also been doing post-tsunami work up in Samoa, and I love the Samoan community, and in some cases the feeling is reciprocated. And as I was walking around the edge of the ground to go to the shitty little non-spot where we had no access to anything, one of the Samoan security guards said, "Oh, John Campbell." I said, "Yeah, g'day, bro." He said, "Oh, come in here." So Chris Jones and I wandered in, and as luck would have it, we found ourselves standing where the tractor goes on to mow the grass, and we were just standing there kind of looking around thinking, shit, this is odd. And then a guy right down at the other end looked across, "John Campbell." I said, "Yeah, g'day, bro." And he said, "Oh, come in here." So Jonesy and I wander in, and we're standing on the side of Eden Park about 20 minutes into the first half. And I say to Jonesy, "Don't fucking move a muscle, bro." So we just stand there, and lo and behold, the game's over, and we run onto the ground and we start interviewing All Blacks. Brad Thorne says a prayer. We wait. I'm delighted to report to all religious people in the room, we waited till he finished his prayer. Then we went across and spoke to him, spoke to Stephen Donald, who'd gone onto the field in the shirt that was too small for him and kicked the winning goal. Anyway, so television gives you that kind of access, and by and large, because it gives you that kind of access, and because there's a persona, and because people are used to seeing you, it's a form of dress up. And so you have a costume, like everyone in the room who's ever had a child or a niece or a nephew or whatever, or a neighbour who puts a tea towel around their neck at the age of 3 and thinks they're Batman. Television is a sort of grown-up version of that. But when the stuff is real and it's sad, you lose it. You lose the dress-up stuff. You're not the dress-up guy anymore. You're suddenly exposed to the absolute awfulness of the humanity. And that happened to me that night at the CTV building, and I found myself drifting back away from it, lost for words. And as I got back, I found myself standing beside a man just there, and we just stood there in silence. And finally, like Noelle and her mum, but finally after about 5 minutes, I said to this man, "Why are you here?" And he said, "My wife's in there." And I just thought, oh my God. And he said, "How are you, John?" I said, "Well, Jesus, I don't know what to say." And I didn't want to keep talking to him, because the thing reporters do when they want to get an interview is they talk to you, and then 10 minutes later they say, "Hey, would you mind if I bring the camera over?" I didn't want to do that to him, but equally I didn't want to abandon him. And we just stood there through much of the night, and then they found his wife, and obviously she'd died. And that's when there's dead air. That's when all the words you think that the job gives you don't exist any longer. That's when all the stuff that you get as a result of being able to play dress-ups because you are a broadcaster doesn't function any longer. And it happened again in the tsunami in Samoa. Mihi Forbes and Arthur Rasmussen, a brilliant cameraman, and I got up on the last flight before anyone realised how bad the tsunami was. We got to Samoa. We went straight to the airport straight away. We got out to the tsunami coastline, and we went, and a man was looking for his daughter. Once again, you don't understand how bad it's going to be. And we said, "Can we join you?" And he said, "Yeah, that's fine." And so we were walking along the coast, filming him, thinking, this is good, this is real, this is good, we're getting good television. And then he found his daughter in a tree, drowned, washed up in the branches of a tree. She was 3 years old. And obviously we stopped filming them. We never put any of that to air. And suddenly you think, fuck. And that's dead air. And you don't know what to say or what to do. And you want to not be there anymore because you don't belong. That's not your realness. That's his realness. And you don't want to be privy to it. You don't want to be a voyeur. You want to get the hell out, but you can't get the hell out because you're the only people with him. And so what do? And so that is an example of dead air that I have experienced when you are completely lost for words and you're completely helpless, and all the artifice, all the contrivance, all the superficiality and artificiality of our jobs suddenly deserts you, and you are stripped back and real and raw and there, and you're thinking, how the hell do I cope with this? And if you cope too well, if your skin gets too thick, you can't be a journalist anymore, because empathy and giving a damn is a key central part of what makes a journalist. And if you cope too badly and it gets to you and it breaks you, then you can't be a journalist anymore. And one of the worst things I've ever done on television, when I really, really, really was unprofessional and poor and completely lost my rag, was with Ken Ring in Christchurch. And it was 2 or 3 days after the CTV building. And I just hadn't slept, and I was just carrying the grief, and I couldn't overcome the sadness and the dread and the despair and the difficulty I was feeling of doing the job and telling those stories and going live to you and being a professional and being polished and remembering my lines and remembering my name, Carol, and all of that stuff. And then suddenly this guy's sitting there, and I just think, fuck. And I just unleashed. And the other thing about unleashing or doing that stuff live is you're about halfway through it, and you think, oh my God. I don't know if any of you have ever played cricket, but you lift your head and you go for the big whack outside off, and then you suddenly see the ball in the air and you think, I want that shot again, as it drifts out to someone in the outfield who's going to catch it very comfortably and you're out. But with live tele, you don't get it again. So the dead air is in the moment between you realizing what you've done and trying to do anything about it. And that moment, might be a quarter of a second or a half a second or a second. You think, oh my God, I need to make that right. I need to undo it. With Ken Ring, I couldn't. I apologized the next night. Sometimes on the radio, I have said, look, I'm really sorry I got that wrong. But by and large, we wear the mask of professionalism, and so we keep on going as if we haven't got it wrong. The audience, of course, knows we have. When you work for Radio New Zealand, they tell you, by God. The lovely thing about Radio New Zealand is if you do something really stupid, 3 days later you get a handwritten letter. You can't read it because the person who's written it is 147. Anyway, dead air. So that's my experience of dead air. Can I tell one? Yes, thank you. Sorry. When Barack Obama became president in 2008, everyone's talking about Donald Trump, but we all, and I don't know how Obama's been. He didn't have the numbers in Senate, and he's constantly, been stymied. But he stood for something. He stood for possibility, and he stood for decency, and he stood for a vision of people overcoming. And he became president in 2008. And Carol was the boss of Camp Alive and sent me to cover the inauguration. And I went with a producer called Lee Taylor and the cameraman, Phil Johnson. And we got there, and we had accreditation, highly unusually for TV3, and we went down to where all the OB trucks were in the live vans and all that kind of stuff, and we said, and we went in, and there was BBC and CNN and everyone, you name it, everyone was there, and they all had their live shots. And we were standing there pre-recording to do some tape packages for Campbell Live hours and hours and hours later. And we all stood there and said, what's the point of doing a tape package here when everyone else is going live with the same shot? There's absolutely no point. Anyone who's interested in this event will already have seen it on BBC or CNN or whatever. So we left, and we walked along Pennsylvania Ave for about 40 minutes, and then we heard this high school bands, just leading. And that, the presidential parade is coming. So we were watching people go in, and because it was post 9/11, because he was a black president and there was concerns about some kind of white supremacy nutter having a go at him, the security was really off the scale. And people were going in, and their bags were being checked and everything. And I went up to people. The Americans are very polite, and I said, could we go to the front of the queue? And they said, yeah. And we got there, and I said, oh, we're from TV New Zealand. And the guy looked at our accreditation. He said, you're not accredited to be here. No media are going in here. Now, at that stage, I had this moment where I thought, fuck, I've come to Washington. For the first time ever, I was actually accredited to be somewhere, and I'm going to miss it. And Carol was my boss, and you don't want to let Carol down. It's good to not let Carol down. And we noticed the Secret Service and the guys who wear all black with the biggest, heaviest guns that have the most bullets in them going in a little bit along the fence. And we went along, and there was a guy there who's a very tall man, and he just looked he just looked a little bit scary. And I went up to him and I said, look, hello, my name's John Campbell. I'm from New Zealand, and I've really fucked this up. And I desperately need to get in there. And he looked at Phil Johnson. He said, turn your camera on. So Phil turned his camera on, and he looked through the view. He looked through the viewfinder, and I thought, shit, he's checking to see if it's a rocket launcher or something. And then he said to Phil, film something. And so Phil filmed something. He said, play it to me. And so he played it. I think Phil filmed a shot of him or something and played it back to him. The guy ascertained. And then he did a really interesting thing. He said, give me your business card. So I got out my TV3. This is pre-Media Works, the glory days, before the arseholes arrived. And I gave him my card. And we went in, and he said, do you promise you're this man? I said, I absolutely promise you, I'm this man. And he said, go in. And we went in, and because we were the only, there was no other television cameras there, people just parted, the sea parted, and we got to the front of the street. We were standing right in the street. And suddenly I took stock, and all the people around us who'd obviously been there for a very long time, it was minus 14 degrees, and they were just completely wrapped up against the cold, were elderly African-American people. And I said to them, where are you from? And they were from Birmingham, Alabama. And they'd bussed there, and many of them remembered segregation, forced busing, all the classic. And they'd come there to see an African-American president. And I stood there, and Phil just started rolling, and I just started talking to them. They were telling their stories. Just the most extraordinary experience of possibility, of people overcoming, of something great being realized, beyond any sense of possibility in their childhood. They were telling the stories, and then Obama came along in his car because it was so cold. I thought, oh, shit, we're still getting beautiful stuff, but we're not going to get the president. And then suddenly about 100 meters down the road, the car stopped, and Obama got out and started walking. And these people were their hands were in the air, and they were crying, and snot was coming out of their nose, and tears was running down their faces. And Obama and Phil is just rolling. He climbs up on a pot plant. It was interesting. What I registered, a municipal pot plant, a big concrete pot. And what I registered at that moment was the snipers on the roof opposite were all pointing at him. All of them. And I thought, shit, are they going to kill Phil? You know, it's worth the risk. Anyway, Obama walked along and he stopped in front of us and he waved at us and he waved down the camera and he waved at these people. And we had something extraordinary, an experience that I will never forget, not dead air, but live air, something real and magic. And that is the glory of our job, the joy of our job, that we see people at their best and their worst. And yeah, we're lucky. We're really, really lucky. And I know that people in this room listen to Radio New Zealand. I suspect that some of you do, and I want to thank you for that. And I hope we can keep doing the kind of stuff that you want from us. So thank you all for coming tonight, and thank you for listening to me prattle on.